Anyway. Oh my god.
I've also cut back on my drinking significantly too.
Wow.
That's where I've been saving most of my money.
Yeah. Although, I could understand if you got a little drunk reading this.
You know something? I had a consolation whiskey afterward because I deserved it. And I bought myself a consolation whiskey today because I knew we were going to talk about it.
I even have notes on this. Normally I just leave the notes and like, okay, I can remember whatever. I'm like, no, I had to write these down. Not even so I'd remember, but just so I could like take out some frustration. Like, no, this needs to not only be stewing in my brain, this needs to be permanently put on paper.
I went down a road that I went down a little bit with David Sparks, where I was writing comments in the books. Like,
I was about to ask you that. Did you try to rewrite this?
You know something? I was starting to, and then the further in I got, the more I was like, I don't even want to do that. I just want to get it over with and be done. So I got it over with, and then I was done. And then I had a very large whiskey and read I remember, and I felt so much better.
Yeah, I will say. I will say that because I immediately started. I normally I give books time to sort of sit with me for a bit before I start a new one. No, I needed something to get. Anyway, let's all just save it for whatever.
Are you simmered down enough?
It won't help to simmer down because I'll just get heated right back up. So it would be like shutting off your car for like 5 minutes just to turn it back on. It's like, why, if you could have just kept it running? Anyway, since this is, starting a new, whatever this is, you get the whole picture, blah, blah, blah.
This is going to be a separate video.
I know.
Treat it like it's a separate video. It's tedious and annoying, but for the sake of continuity.
Did we even do it?
You've done a film. You know how important continuity is.
We never actually animated the film.
Okay,
we just recorded the audio for the film, but yes, you need continuity in terms of tone. You can't just have like, oh yeah, he's angry. You can't Amber Heard the whole thing and be like, cry this moment. Oh wait, you're asking a question. Stop crying and go, oh yes, and then start crying again. It's like, no, it's inconsistent. Either continue crying and try to talk through the crying, or don't cry at all, bitch. Anyway.
I didn't follow that, but...
Okay. Neither did I, but I had someone who did, and I had to fucking listen to it. I didn't watch it, but I had to listen to it. It was annoying.
Who was it?
Huh?
Who?
My mother.
I wondered.
You know who. Anyway. So, this is Murder of Prose. I'm one of your torture... Anyway.
You're one of the tortured children, and so am I.
Yes, and this is EK, the other tortured child. We review books, we pass judgment on those we like, and condemn the ones we hate.
That was kind of an uncalled for slap in the face, though. I probably shouldn't have gone with tortured children.
Yeah, we are the abused children.
Well, I mean, that's kind of low.
Tortured is abuse in its own right, but it's not. Anyway.
Well, just anyway.
Today we're doing 2 books. We're doing the short fantasy novella, The Garden of the Golden Children by Ashley. I tried saying the last name and the first name at the same time. By Ashley Hutchison. And we will also be doing I Remember, a novel by Emily Hoffman. So, let's get started on The Garden of the Golden Children. Just going to prolong this as long as possible, just for you.
You know something?
Make you earn that little glass of whiskey.
It's not, I will say this. It isn't, this is better. This is better than when we did Calibration.
Oh yeah, this is definitely a higher score.
Well, no, because I didn't have to put it on a shelf and then swear to never look at it again and then drag it down because you were like, we should do a book that we hate.
I will at least say this. I didn't have to put this book down for days and forget about it and then have to go back and like finish it. I did finish this in like a day and a half.
I finished. I think this took me like an hour and a half.
You don't have a son to occupy your time.
I don't have a child to take care of, but also, I mean, B, I've always just been kind of a fast reader.
I will give it that. I didn't feel the need to put this down for a day or two to try and massage.
Calibrate.
Shut the fuck up.
try to massage a higher IQ back into your brain.
Yeah, to flake off the dead brain cells that I can, and then put Miracle Grow on my brain because I was stupid. So I'm like, this will grow back brain cells. Anyway.
No, better, much better circumstances.
Yes. However, let us get to the review. How did you feel about the plot? I tried so hard to say that with a straight face, but how did you feel about it?
I gave it a 3. Because there was, a beginning, and then there was a conflict, and then there was a resolution.
Sure.
Things happened.
Movement happened.
Lots of movement. I mean, a lot of my problems, okay, I have read some shitty books in my day, so a shitty plot I can kind of let go, and I can score that a little bit higher. My chief complaints are elsewhere.
Okay. All things considered, I mean, sure, there's a beginning, middle, and end. But and this also just goes into the structure, but we'll get to that later. The structure of the novel bogged it down to a 2 for me.
We're already on structure?
No. Its structure plays into the plot for me.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean.
Like,
yes.
there may be
yes, it does.
There may be a beginning, middle, and end, but there's just so much in between that bogs it down for me that, like, you don't, and I'm going to regurgitate this note later, you don't stay in one spot long enough to latch onto or really care. Like, yes, it's Ellis we're talking about, but then you go into the history of somewhere and all this other stuff.
No,
so
you don't.
It wasn't enough plot to really...
Don't go into the history of somewhere at all. It's like a vague overview. You don't get into the history of the place.
But how it's written is saying that it's the history of somewhere, but it's not even the history. It's like
it's not a history. It's a vague overview.
It's a vague, just anyway. This could have been shortened to a short story.
It should have been a short story.
So there's not enough plot to even justify it being a novella. 2.
It would have been better as a short story than it is as a novella.
Even flash fiction.
This
would have scored higher as flash fiction, but since it's as a novella, it's a 2 for me. There wasn't enough. Yes, things happened, but it wasn't enough for me to be like, wow, what a journey.
I wouldn't call it even a journey because she didn't really move on from where she started.
No.
Like, for it to be a journey, there has to be, like, you can't have a character remaining the same. Like, what was her major development? She's bisexual and she told on the principal? Ooh.
Anyway.
You
could at least use the right terminology for the book. It's headmaster.
Principal head. It's the same fucking position.
It is the same position, but at least...
But no, that's what I mean. Like, she started off with a particular feeling about the headmaster. And she carried that particular feeling about the headmaster all through the... Like, it didn't start out that she was initially very trusting.
Yeah.
Then I would have bought the horror.
And that's what I didn't get, is her instant distrust. Because everyone else seemed to like him.
But she's different.
But she's different. Why?
We know she's different because she's bisexual. And she doesn't like the headmaster.
Here's where I have to say,
like,
was she abused before the book? Because you wouldn't have that kind of distrust right and be the only one unless you had a previous experience.
No, I don't think she was abused before the start of the story. Like, based on what I read, like, her entire purpose of disliking the headmaster started with the number of roses everywhere. And, like, that's not... No. I am not buying what you're selling. I mean, I bought it, but, like, I'm not picking up what you're laying down here.
Yeah. I mean, that would be like saying, like, I don't like a person because of how he tied his shoes. It's like, okay. You may not like how they tied their shoes, but that doesn't mean you should hate or distrust the person. You hated them because of the number of... Okay, anyway. Like I said, the plot would have scored higher if it were a short story because it wouldn't feel bogged down with all this other stuff.
Yeah.
You could have cut out particular sections that repeated and then built upon and then repeated. You could have done away with the history of somewhere or the history of the headmaster and just dealt with
that all seemed so unnecessary too.
And even the story about the female warrior princess whatever that ended up being how do I put this, relevant near the end.
The warrior princess who hanged herself?
Yeah. It
would have been nice if that warrior princess had a name. And,
yeah.
Like, if we're gonna do this in a book like this, A, that warrior princess needs a name. B, the character who's supposed to be the echo of that warrior princess needs to identify open,
that,
like in a very not blatant way, but in a much more
connective tissue sort
yes.
of. Yeah.
Like there's gotta be
if that was supposed
other than
if that was supposed to be, mirroring Ophelia mirroring the warrior princess / an element of foreshadowing, it was. We'll get to that later because it goes into execution.
Well, like even if yeah, just give me something other than a random story about a warrior princess that doesn't fucking mean anything until somebody else commits suicide in a completely different way.
Yeah. Speaking of characters and whatnot, what did you give characters?
God. Initially I gave characters a 5, but I reduced that to 2.
I give this a flat 0. Because as you even stated, Alice doesn't go anywhere. She's flat throughout the entire thing. All of the other characters merely existed to say this bit of dialogue, and they were gone. Do this little bit, and then they were gone. You didn't get to know these people. They were just, here you are to say something. Here you are to do something else. Now you're out. Now you're out. It was like, I won't say a one-man show, but it was essentially doing a one-man show with supporting actors coming in and kind of acting as parts of a memory to where you needed 2 people to have that person's oh, here's what was said to me. Here's how I responded. They went away.
Yeah.
So there weren't.
It's like a bad cutscene in a video game.
Yeah, there weren't characters. There were just set pieces, little chess pieces that you just push into place when you needed them. Oh, you did your thing. Now let's get you off the board, but you're no longer needed. So to me, there were no characters in this book.
No, there weren't. Not really. The only one who underwent any real change at all was probably Carl, Kelvin, whatever his name is.
Cal?
Because he actually had a minor development where initially he really liked the bad guy, and then at the end he didn't.
Yeah.
And that was the big development.
But since he wasn't really the focus, it was just he changed, but his was more circumstantial of what happened to, for lack of a better term, the main character.
Yeah, it does really kind of feel like you're using that term loosely. Main character. But it would have been nice to get to know some of them.
Yeah.
So that I could at least give a shit about the things that happened.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like watching stick figures.
Yeah.
They weren't how when you read you can visualize the people and the places and everything that's happening inside your head.
Yeah, and they don't even have to be described that well. You can picture them just by either how they're talking or how they present themselves. These people did not present themselves in any such way that you could picture them.
No, all I could imagine was an amorphous balloon shape blob.
I think the most
that is roughly this shape.
The most I could get out of in terms of a description, terms of descriptions with, I think it was Cal and Ophelia, was, you had Ophelia had the curly, like, apple hair or whatever, or something like that.
Yeah.
Apple skin hair. Here's the thing, apple skin, apple comes in different colors.
I know, I
Such
was
as
like,
red,
so she's got
green
green?
hair, Fuji apple hair, Grandma Smith apple hair. Like, which apple are we talking? I mean, obviously red, because red, but
Well, later on she said red. When she said apple skin hair, I was like, so it's like a reddish green. She did a weird hair job.
yeah. I just imagined. See, but when, of course, when you get red hair, since you have no other description other than the hair, I just imagined an amorphous blob wearing a Carrot Top wig. You know who Carrot Top is, right? Okay. Yeah. And then when you have Cal, who was only really described in terms of smell and his eye color, like he smelled like cinnamon. I just imagined a cinnamon stick with like striking aqua blue eyes or whatever. That's all I imagined, was just a cinnamon stick walking around, and like out of nowhere the cinnamon stick grows a hand and like holds Ellis. Like, it was terrifying.
It was like a really surreal dream.
Wait, okay.
We're not like, that's how much everything made sense. Where it's like, you're like, what the fuck is going on? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why are you like this?
Yeah. Anyway.
And you're just walking, how those dreams where it's like, it's just too surreal to even be, like, for you to even be caught up in it.
And then you wake up,
and you're walking around and it feels like you're plodding through quicksand and you can't really, like, that's what it felt like.
I feel like I'm just sinking at this point. There we go. Anyway, we could probably talk about the lack of characters forever. How'd you feel about the novel's style?
0.
Or the 0?
0.
Gave her a 2. Probably a little generous, because I went to 0. Looking at my scratch outs, I went to 0 and I was like, words did get on the page. And she did attempt for this sort of like borderline lyrical prose style, so I'm like, I'll give her a 2 just out of...
Well, okay. So my notes I wrote, she's romantic and poetic in some parts and in a nice way, but completely undersold by vagueness and choppy dialogue. Romance and minimalism don't blend well. Like, a romantic way of talking, because the way she used, like, the way she wrote some of those pieces, she does know how to write a complete and masterful sentence.
Yes.
She knows how to use the English language. She just fucking won't.
Yeah. And I will agree with you on the choppiness. The way she wrote her sentences, her paragraphs, just felt very like staccato, like you da 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 da, and then like, but it would like da 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 da, like it would just get, and then it would like start over, and like you couldn't. It felt like you were getting into a rhythm, and then it would like not be within that rhythm anymore. Like you couldn't capture a cadence.
Incoherent.
It was very incoherent. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's like she didn't really know what she wanted to say, so she repeated herself just a lot.
Yeah.
But it's not like, again, some of the way she described some people, like even just the shadow of their person, or the way she talked about the roses, and the way she talked about like time and death. Those out within the context of the story, they were fucking useless. By themselves, separate from this,
They would have worked fine.
They
by
would have been
themselves.
great. That would have been a great little piece.
Especially-
that would have been charming and fun. It's not like she doesn't know how to put these
Yeah.
things together. She just fucking won't. And I don't it caused me a great deal of psychological stress.
Yeah. Did you actually skip the thoughts on things, or did?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't want to read the thoughts on things. I read the first 3 and I was like, I'm getting sick of this shit.
Because by themselves, like you said, they do work fine, but in the context of this story, they don't.
See, if you're going to do thoughts on things, like if you're going to go that kind of route, you have to have a higher capacity for logic than what was displayed on that page. Because otherwise, I can't. Other people can, and other people might enjoy it. I can't.
In fact, because I flipped to it. It's the one called Thoughts on Love, the second. It works great by itself. I wouldn't call it a thought on love. I would call it a thought on, how we, the linguistics of language and how we what we use to, what do I want to say?
Express an idea.
How we express love, but not love itself. Because it says, when we were younger, we always thought it was the heart, but it's actually the brain, but we didn't change our language. We don't go oh, I love you with all my brain. It's still I love you with all my heart, even though the heart is not what develops the emotion. So I would say it's more thoughts on how we use language to express love, and then at the very end it says
I mean, that's still not very well thought out, because when you love someone, which part of you feels it? Not your brain.
Well, that's where it says at the very end, you see, while the clever minds have astounding evidence that love comes from the brain, it is not the brain that skips when you fall in love, and it's not the brain that aches when you're heartbroken. It has always been the heart. However, because we'll both agree that it's the heart that hurts. However, the brain is what sends signals to make the heart ache. So it's still technically the brain, but we feel it in the heart.
See,
our brain is processing the heartbreak. It processes, but then the heart feels it.
I would tend to disagree. But that's the thing. If you're going to have that kind of discussion where it's philosophical and physical, you need more.
It doesn't work in this book.
You need more.
It doesn't work in this book. If in order to make it work in this book should have been longer to flesh everything out.
Yeah. You can't make an assertion like that and bring up an opposing viewpoint and then just kind of leave it vague and vacant.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. So yeah, I gave her.
I
think that those complaints probably fall more under structure.
Yeah.
But for her style, I still gave her a 0.
I gave her a 2.
Concept execution. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's just because, for style, I gave her a 2 just because you can tell she knows how to write, at least. And there are moments where it's okay, we're getting somewhere, and then it just kind of...
It's intensely frustrating.
Concept and execution. Concept, I gave a 5 because we are exploring abuse from my viewpoint, because I don't really read fantasy. I've read a few fantasy books, but I haven't read a lot of fantasy. But from what I've read, I have never read anything that explores abuse in this way. However, its execution, I give it a 1 because it didn't do much with it. It didn't really... It didn't go in depth enough for me to go, okay, did you really explore abuse here, or did you just tell a story where abuse happened? And then the girl told on the principal. I feel like we should have stayed a while. And like, because you wouldn't tell on them right away.
If it's too dark to flesh out to the degree that in this context it requires, like, if you can't stay there long enough to do the job, you need to stay away from the job.
Yeah. So execution got a 1 for me. What did you score it?
I gave it a 4 on concept. And I gave it a 4 on concept mostly because I just wanted to know what happened to the Golden Children.
Mm-hmm.
Which you never find out.
Yeah, you never do.
So I might drop that to a 3. Execution, I gave a 0.5.
Okay.
I was profoundly annoyed. That's all I want to say about it as far as concept and execution goes.
All right. We can move to structure. I gave it a 0.
I gave it a 0 because it doesn't exist. Okay, and I'm going to tell you one of the things that annoyed the absolute fuck out of me. Like, beyond fucking irritating. So we get to page 27. Page 27, you can't really see that. So you're going on this little, like, this is where you first, I think this is where you first kind of hear about Ophelia. Maybe. Maybe she showed up beforehand, but I don't think so. Where she's in the library, and there's, in the Great Library of the Academy, the red, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so she finds a book, and she's skipping back to her room, and then fingers much too thin to be normal curled over her shoulders and led her into a dim office. Without a break, without any hint that any part of this scene has changed, we are immediately on page 28 at the very top, back in the middle of a conversation between Ellis and Cal in the middle of the goddamn night. Now, the implication of page 27 is that this happened in the middle of the day, or at least before the middle of the night. The implication of everything before page 28 was that Ellis and Cal were standing in her doorway talking in the middle of the night, like after midnight. If you are going to have a fucking scene change, lead up to it. This happens regularly throughout this whole fucking book. So style gets a 0, and if I could have given her reasonably a negative 50 million, I would have. Not style, structure.
Yeah.
But you get my point.
I get your point. My biggest gripe from this entire thing, other than what you've pointed out, is that this book never stays in one place long enough for there to build any momentum. Like, for instance, you get Ophelia, get introduced in that page. You skip right over to Ellis and Cal. When you start to feel like you're about to get some momentum, you skip to a thought on whatever, or you get the history of somewhere, or the history of the headmaster according to these people who shared it with no one, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. And you keep bouncing back and forth between these things. You don't stay in one spot long enough for there to be any sensical forward movement where when you get back to a certain character, or in this case, Ellis, you go, okay, where were we? And even like what you said, like where we left off with Cal and Ellis, it was like some other point, and then like you jump to the middle of the night. What happened in between there? Why is this? Why
Were
are
they standing there talking for 24 hours?
Yeah. So structure gets a 0 from me because there was nothing to grab onto in terms of structural.
For all the talk about time, there is a very limited concept of how to structure it. Maybe there should have been fewer expositions about time,
or
and
fewer,
more,
fewer
consistent.
repeated descriptions of the Academy being swallowed by Ivy.
God, oh God, I didn't care about it the first time, and by the 80th time, I was like, I don't. And then the rose, I don't fucking care about the Ivy and the roses unless you're going to give me something that is it actually like important in that symbolism. It requires too much thought. If you didn't get it, it went over your head. No, I don't think you got it when you wrote it. So anyway, what'd you score diction?
I gave it a 3.
I gave it a 7.
I originally scored it a 5. But it's the inconsistency. It is the inconsistency that made me score it lower.
Yeah, I think I'm going to drop mine to having sat on it and revisited how I felt reading it. I think I am going to give it a lower score, 5. I'm giving diction a 5 because, and it's like I said with style. Like, she has shown that she does have a good mastery of the English language. She just refuses to use it, and that's aggravating.
Like, it's as if she like read Hemingway's iceberg theory, like how, and she took it to where it's like, all right, let's do iceberg theory, but global warming, there is no iceberg. Minimal as fuck. Like, so like, just complete. Anyway.
I mean, I think I don't know why anyone would take any advice that Hemingway ever gave them about writing.
But
he's classic.
Like I said, I originally gave her a 6, went down to a 5, went back up to a 6, and then I was like, no. The more I think about this, it's a 3 because, like you say, she does show she has a grasp on how to use the English language effectively, but she chooses not to, and the fact that she chooses not to infuriates me. like
it doesn't make you artistic.
Huh?
It doesn't make you artistic.
No, it doesn't make it. It doesn't make you artistic. It doesn't make this experimental. It just makes this very. I wouldn't even say bare bones. This is cremated ash of a person. Like, there's still something there. There's ash, but it's not enough to make a person. You can no longer make a person with ash.
There's a fly. Sorry, there's a fly around, and I'm trying to kill it.
Let's go to formatting.
0.
I gave it a 2.
I gave it a 0.
Gave it a 2. Because
why so generous?
Why is it a 2? Words got on the page. However, awful fonts. The text is non-justified. And as previously mentioned before, the paragraphs are structured in such a staccato fashion that it's too choppy to enjoy.
Oh God, it's just like, okay, this. Why is, okay, so here's the first, and then this is not a new chapter. This is just an, wait, what the fuck is this?
And also, like, if you're gonna do
You made really great.
like those numbered bits,
No, you did not.
if you're gonna do these numbered bits, put them on this side, and then flip over. Who cares if there's a white empty? Oh, and oh my God, when there are empty pages,
Like,
when there are empty pages, and I'm looking at the person
fuck is this?
added this book.
What the fuck is this?
It's supposed to read. It's supposed to feel poetic. If you have an empty space, format the novel in such a way that this is a blank page entirely, to where you don't need the header or the page number. You can do that. Amazon KDP will not penalize you for not having the page number, as long as you go from 89 to the next full page being 93. You're fine. You don't need the header or the footer. If you're going for a blank page, make it 100% fucking blank. You do not need the header or the footer for those instances. Especially if they're supposed to be the 3 pages missing from the book to be symbolic of the missing pages from the book where the pages were ripped out that Ophelia was reading. If you're going for that kind of symbolism, have no header or footer. Leave them completely fucking blank. It's as if they're not even there. Sorry, I let my formatting side of me get in the way of that. But it's something I'm very fucking passionate about. Yeah, I don't get that. You don't have to explain it to me. I get it. Well, I know you're explaining it to the non-existent people right now, but
whoever, Ms. Hutchison, whoever did your formatting needs to be fired, or at least undergo some extensive training so that they don't do this shit to any of your other books ever again.
anyway. Length.
I gave it a 5 because it was simultaneously too long and not long enough. So I thought not an even, but an odd middle of the road would be a good score. What did you give it?
A 0.
You gave it a 0?
I gave it a 0. Now, I will say this. She has every right to have written this. For some. This didn't need to be published.
What?
This didn't need to be published.
No.
Because having read her first book, which is a memoir where the names have been changed and blah, 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 it deals with the same theme, I guess, abuse of the same nature. We already have that. We have your memoir. We do not need a fantastical account of the same thing. If you still needed to work out through your trauma, it's good that you wrote this. Good for you. you worked through your past and maybe it helped you. This did nothing new than the other one. It actually did less. This did not have to be published. I'm not saying you didn't have to write it. It shouldn't have been written. You still should have written it for your own benefit. I could have not read this, and I would not have suffered from not knowing it. Its length gets a 0 for me, simply on that merit. Not everything needs to be published. Not everything should be published. I will even be one to admit, my first 2 books, in the state that they were in, when I first wrote them, should never have been published. They were good writing exercises and a means for me to work through my own stuff that I was going through at the time. They should have never been published. The first thing that should have been published was Arcadia, because I felt like at that point I didn't have a voice. And I wasn't working through the same shit. I was working on something completely removed from myself. It wasn't personal. It wasn't a form of therapy. This feels like therapy. This should have stayed with you. I'm sorry. That's my opinion. Length gets a 0.
In terms of going through something that dark, if vagueness doesn't help, so if what we're talking about here is how to cope or how to survive or how to spot the signs, like just reliving your trauma for the sake of reliving your trauma is not helpful to you or anyone else. And if it's so dark that you can't expand on it, don't print it. Like, if you can't specify what signals to look for, how to cope with something, like, you're not helping anybody. This is self-gratification, and it's not useful for anyone. Least of all you. It was, so that's why I say it's simultaneously too short and too long. Quotability.
You got 6 out of 10 for me.
I gave it a 2.
Okay.
It was the quote from the grandmother.
Okay. Oh, yeah, okay. The
Someday
you or someone or something.
Yeah, someday you'll have something to say, and if you don't say it, you'll have to scream it. That kind of, along those lines.
I found 3. One is relatively long because it's not even relatively long because her paragraphs are short. It was off page 111. And it's the first 3 paragraphs where Time himself is sitting at his desk and he's, basically taking minutes out of all these things to give to Death to eat. And he's basically just wishing that he could use his time instead of to destroy something to create. And then, like, the last sentence. Hold on. I'll skip the first sentence of the first paragraph and go on to the second, or go on to the next 2. It says, and though Time appreciated the naughty details of his craft, there were times he found himself at his desk wishing that his medium were one of creation instead of destruction. What would such a thing be like that could outlast even him? He longed for such a thing, something beautiful and eternal, something to sit with him in the long hours of the work. And to me, like, although it's not exact, I would say that's like a really good comparison to how it feels to be a writer. Like, yes, you're killing these characters, which you could view as an act of destruction, but you are creating something that may even outlast you. And then the second quote I found was page 174. And it's just a sentence. And it is, whispers had a way of sounding menacing, even when they didn't mean to.
That was one of the bits that I did like.
And then the final quote that I had, which is where this one hit me, having gone through my own experiences with loss. Alice tried desperately to recall the sound of her voice as she spoke animatedly about some book or other, or how the freckles smattered across her nose always resembled a scrambling of constellations, but everything was fuzzy, as if she were trying to see things through a fogged window. That is like the perfect description on trying to remember someone, like a loved one who's passed. You try very hard without looking at pictures to imagine their face, to imagine their laugh, their voice. And while you might think you can kind of recreate it in your head, it's not the same. Like it's as it says, through a fogged window. Like you're not quite there. It's not until you see a video of them or a picture where the details come back. And that's why that one stuck out. And that was, if that was the only thing that was written with this book that I read, I'd be like, okay, this is good. Like, you got me. You hit me in the feels. But that doesn't even have to do with abuse. That deals with loss. Which isn't even like, I mean, you could say abuse is the loss of innocence, but that's the loss of a person.
Well, everybody loses their innocence.
Everyone loses their innocence at some point, and it doesn't even have to be through abuse. It's just the act of growing up.
Well,
You
yeah,
realize-
no, that's what I mean. Like, everybody experiences a loss of innocence. Not everybody experiences the loss of a person at the same rate.
No. So those were the 3 quotes that I got from that, which is why it gets a 6. And it's also why I will preemptively state it got 1 point extra credit. Because that final quote itself, that's the only part that stuck with me after I read it.
Yeah, the only part that stuck with me was the bit about her
You'll have something to say, yeah.
the conversation with her grandmother. No. Yes, that is true. Where is it? I'll have to find it again.
I think you said it was like 1...
One day there will be something important you want to say, or there will be something you want to say because it will be important. One day you're going to have to scream for it because silence is nothing and you are very much something. That stuck with me because it's something along the lines of what my mom used to say to me.
Yeah. But yeah. Quotability.
That's the only thing that's the only thing that stuck.
Now, in terms of overall satisfaction, it's the same as length. I gave it a 0. I did not enjoy this. I did not enjoy this.
No.
And not because the topic was heavy and I couldn't handle it. I just did not enjoy reading it. In the slightest.
No, I did not enjoy any part of this at all. Like, someone who can write well and chooses not to it's deeply annoying. Like, it's not even, this isn't even a case like Iker where he can't write and he just won't stop. Like, she could write and she could be really good, but she's just not gonna. And it's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
So, I gave it a 0. 0 satisfaction, 0 extra credit.
I gave it 1 point extra credit only because of that quote. Only because of that quote. Like, it was like, because yeah, 1. Well,
Yeah, since reworking my score of this, it has dropped considerably. Like, initially, when you asked me, I told you it was a 34.9.
Uh-huh.
It's dropped 14 points.
Did it drop 14 points or is it now 14 points?
No, it dropped 14 points for a total of 20.5. I'm not rounding up.
No, you don't have to round up for this. You don't even have to round up technically for Amazon if you were to leave a review, because that is where it is. I gave it 22 red and gold wrapped chocolates out of 100. Even though I didn't care for the book, I still thought of something whimsical for its score. Even though it's not whimsical, that's kind of dark.
I was hoping it would be some crap about golden children.
22 wasted plot points out of 100. No, that'd be more. Yeah. I can't say I'd recommend this to anybody.
No.
Like I said, with the length portion, this should have just remained in your desk.
Yeah, no, like, it's not that it shouldn't have been written, it's that it's so deeply personal, it should not be in public.
No, that would be like, this is a horrible analogy, but that would be like publishing like a picture of like semen stained underwear and being like, this is my life story. Look at all this wasted potential. These could have been kids.
I knew that's where you were going. But it's that it's so, like, if you're gonna do fiction and you're going to inform that fiction with your own personal, like, it's better to inform with your personal experience than to fictionalize your personal experience. Does this make sense? Especially if it's something as traumatizing as abuse, like of this nature. Not spanking that you never got over, but somebody actually sexually molesting.
Say molesting, yeah.
Like, that's something that if you have to fictionalize it in order to work through it, leave it in, that's way too personal. But it's my story and it's up to me. Yeah, and this is my channel and I can tell you it was a bad fucking idea.
So, anyway, to get this bad taste out of our mouths, please, let's move on. So, now that we've spewed our distaste all over
flakes everywhere,
the digital format, let us move on to I Remember by Emily Hoffman.
I really loved this book.
I kind of wanted to read it all over again.
Same.
But I have other things in my reading schedule that I'd like to prioritize.
Well, I just have other things to do, and I like to let things set for a while after I read them. Unless it's the Chronicles of Narnia, and then it would be different. We'd be having a different conversation.
It's gonna stay.
I feel like I need to get up and walk around for a minute after that last hellscape, because it was just...
No, go ahead.
How long have we been recording?
I can't see that part of my screen due to my 2 hours and 46 minutes.
No, that's how long the call's been going. How long have we been recording?
Oh, an hour and 2 minutes.
It took us an hour to get through that.
We can cut it down if we have to.
It's just an hour of us bitching.
No, I would say the bitching part really, at least for me, really came at the length part.
Yeah, for me.
I finally was like, this did not need to exist.
I know I said to simmer down, but then I just heated up. And I'm sorry about that.
No, you're fine. I tried to keep it simmered, but once I got to length, I was like, no, I have to voice my correct opinion on this. This should not have been published. It is far too personal a story. And also, like I said, you already touched up on this in your memoir. You don't need a fictionalized bullshit account of that does nothing. There's nothing is done in this book. You don't like the person, he molests you, you tell on him, he's gone. Girl dies. And Cal.
How closely did it resemble the memoir? I think that was a question that I wanted to ask.
There's so much more done in the memoir, and the memoir is shorter. There's so much more done. So much more. There's conversations with her mother, conversations with her sister via text. She brings up the abuser himself. She talks about growing up there and goes into detail about these memories of hers. There was no... that would have scored a lot higher. And it's the fact that I did read that and then read this that I'm like, this is just a rehash of something you've already talked about. And if you keep rehashing this abuse theme exploration, you're not going to last long as a writer.
Well, you're not going to last long, period, because that kind of, like, that is despair, and it will eat you alive. If you keep rehashing it, and if you never let it go, it will eat you alive, and you're going to end up drinking 3 bottles of vinegar.
And here's why. Because I took down Division Street and Imperfect Lines, and I originally did not intend to rework them. They were just going to be whatever. I sat through and I read through the awful writing, but I'm like, okay, Division Street actually has a decent story. It was just written poorly because I didn't know how to write then. I was just starting.
Yeah.
And even Imperfect Lines, even though I would say Division Street and Imperfect Lines are the closest I will ever get to writing connected tissue that is like, this is what happens after, because even in Imperfect Lines, it's mentioned the character wrote the book Division Street, and then he went into himself and basically committed social suicide for like 5 years. Even though that they're connected tissues, which I think this, and I'm not even going to go grab it, and her memoir are, I feel like, are a connective tissue to where that's the actual account, and this is like her form of escape in trying to deal with it in a fictional context. She failed. At least Division Street and Imperfect Lines. Division Street is, okay, I'm losing friends left and right, either be it due to death, through drugs, or we're just falling out as friends. That was me dealing with that. In Perfect Lines was me going, what if I'm the problem? What if I'm the reason? And then trying to fix it, but then also realizing at the same time, we're human. Why try to rebuild those friendships when you're just better off on your own? So, like, even though they're connected tissue, they do kind of go away from each other. They're not living side by side like this. Huh?
No, there's a progression
Yeah.
of both. Well, from your personal perspective, but also from the perspective of the storyteller.
Yes.
Like there's an actual.
There's a progression. It's not
down a line. It's not.
It's not. I'm stuck in my abuse. Let's continue.
You have to let that kind of thing. You have to let it go. Speaking from experience, you have to let it go, because it will stunt your whole life.
Yeah.
It's not easy, and you know that as well as I do. Like, it's definitely not easy to let it go, but you have to let it go.
Yeah. Because I was talking to Daisha about this, because as soon as I finished it, I bitched at her. Because I think you were already in bed, but she stays up late. And she kind of like defended the book in some ways. Like, well, not defended it. She kind of had the same argument where it was like she needed to write it for herself. And I continue. I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing that. I'm saying that she should never have written it. I'm saying it should have never been published. This is something you write for yourself to... I don't even think she got over it. I wouldn't have. Because you're not tackling the topic. You're acknowledging it, but you're not tackling it. And...
It's the what comes after.
Yeah.
Like, if you really wanted to tackle it, you go over what comes after. You don't end it at something else came after.
Yeah. But...
That would have been much more compelling. If she had written the memoir and done a fictionalized version of how she got over it. If she got over it. But she didn't do that because she didn't get over it.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a house. Let's do this one.
Yes, let's go to... I remember. The second book we read was I Remember by Emily Hoffman. And this won't be, as we've mentioned, we did enjoy this book. This will not be a hour-long bitch fest, I guess.
Well, what's great about this book, especially in sort of conjunction with the other one, not conjunction, but contrast.
Yes, contrast, yes.
Because they both are dealing with similar personal moments in life.
Yeah.
Except Hoffman took hers in she took a very thoughtful and very pleasant approach. Now, I'm sure that her personal experience of, a house being sold was not as harrowing as child abuse. However, that is one of the key differences. So where would you like to begin? Would you like to begin at the beginning? Or would you like to begin at the middle or the end?
Well, Vonnegut, if we start with the red, which was, or all the stuff at the beginning was the beginning, and all that stuff in the end was the end, and all that other stuff in the middle was the middle, I think we should start at the beginning to, add a little context to what we're talking about. Otherwise, if we start at the middle or end, people will get lost. As always, we will start with how we felt about the plot of the book, which I gave it an 8.
Give it a 9.
Reason for the 8, as opposed to anything higher, while each part of this book kept me reading, and it does have, for lack of a better term, a happy ending. And there is, in their own way, a connective tissue. These felt like episodes. Like it was more episodic than it felt connected.
There were 6 plots within one plot.
Yes, it was all 6 plots within a plot within one book. And at the end of it, I had to ask myself, what was the reason? Why? Why did we read this? Like, that was the only thing that, like, it was like, there's no, I mean, yeah, there's growth and all that crap, but it just,
It's very sentimental.
it's sentimental, but this is kind of like the what we mentioned earlier, probably off camera, where, as a child you were very nice. Well, now you're mean. So I'm like, I don't have the words to express why it's an 8, but like in my gut, I'm just like, it just, if other aspects of this book didn't work in its favor, this plot would probably get a lower score, because there kind of isn't a plot.
Yeah. Which
You're
is
just-
actually part of why I gave it a 9 was because, I mean, it doesn't really have a plot.
Doesn't have a
it
plot, but
has
it's sentimentality.
6 different plots, and each of them is.
I would say 6 different vignettes. These are little just moments.
Each one has a beginning and middle. Like, there is a beginning, a middle, and end. There is a
Yeah.
conflict and a resolution within each one.
But in the context of the book as a whole, like,
No.
these are just no. In the context of the book as a whole, these are just little. I mean, yes, there's a beginning, middle, and end to each part, but the book as a whole, like, these are just little. Like, this is a slice of this
Yes.
time of the house's life. If we only look at it as the house, this is a period of their life, then another period, and another period, and another period, and another period. These are little extended vignettes of the house's life.
Yes.
But again, it still scores an 8, even though I would say it's a plotless novel. There are stories in this book that are well fleshed out, well written, and can make you feel a certain way when you get to certain parts of them. Like when I knew in part 2, I knew what was coming before it happened, and I actually felt my heart race. Because I knew what was coming, and I've kind of been there. So, like, to experience, so, like, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, not even the end of part 3, but the revelation as to how the character is connected to the house was like, oh, okay, this isn't just like a new family that's put their old man here. This is the person who died's grandfather. And the reason he touches the mural and even shows it just a glimmer of an emotion before he just goes, is because that's the last thing that's left of his granddaughter. So, like,
I think the worst part of that, like, as far as for me personally, the most emotional part was it's near the end where the men come and they paint over when they're rebuilding the house, and they paint like that. To me, was so sad.
Yeah. So, despite being, as I've said before, and as it still scores high, because you almost don't need like the complicated plot for this to be enjoyable. If this was in any way overcomplicated, I feel like it would have weighed it down.
No, it was very I don't want to use the word simplistic, but it's not so heavy that you can't keep going.
Yeah. Like, and even like what kept me going was like, even after each, because like there's a 3-part stint of just like almost downhill.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you kind of like, okay, I want to read the next part just like for the house's sake. Like, I hope things get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, plot is a solid A for me.
Yeah. No, I give it a 9. What about characters?
Gave those a 9 because while everyone is fleshed out, you've known these people growing up throughout your life. It's the fact that you're getting everything from this very disconnected perspective through the house. You don't know the characters well enough. You don't know exactly what's going through their heads. You can only speculate through the house itself from what the house is seeing. So like, and since it's a house, it doesn't completely understand human nuance. So like, there's a few things where it's like you as a human, you get what's going on, but the house kind of describes it in such a way like, I don't know what this is, or blah, 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 blah. But so if it weren't for that psychic distance between the characters through the house, this would have been a 10 for me, but it's the fact that we're getting it in such a detached way. We don't know the characters as well as we could, but we know them well enough to where they feel real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I can see your point. I gave it a 10 as far as characters go, just because I do know those. I have known those people. I do know those people. I don't, and it to see them like where I've known them, they didn't all traipse through the same house. So to see them go in succession through the same house is one thing.
Yeah.
And yes, there is that detachment, but really it's at the same time, I mean, and I suppose this is down more to her style than anything, but there is such a color to the way she presents people.
Yeah.
And there's such a vivid life to them that it's even, you do get attached, like even to the first family, even though I got no quotes and I got very little takeaway from that from part 1, you still feel at least some kind of emotional connection to them in terms of stability and what you can expect if you follow.
When we get, because it won't take long to get there, when we get to structure, I do have something to say about part 1, well, all parts essentially, but as to why, even though we didn't even though you and I didn't take any quotes from part 1, and part 1 was kind of the slowest part.
Yeah, it was.
I do believe, and this goes in the points of structure, so we'll get when we get there, but I do believe there's a reason for why it was such a drag. Well, not a drag, but like why it seems to last the longest, and even though we didn't take anything away from it, I think I know what her purpose for that. And I think you know what the purpose for it was too, but I just want to talk about it. When it comes to, since we're talking characters still, when it comes to the house, did you feel with how the voice spoke, was it a genderless entity, or did it give you vibes of feminine or masculine?
The house itself.
The house itself.
No, I got a genderless entity.
Okay.
Did you?
No, yeah, I got one as well, but I was curious to see, because I have seen discussion brought up about this book on Twitter, where people ask if you've read. I remember, did the house have a gender to you or did it not? And now having read it, I feel like I didn't get it. I didn't get a gender from it, but if I had to assign one, like if you were like, give it a gender now, I would say female only on the premise that this was written by a woman.
Yeah.
So like my immediate thing is to think, okay, woman. It's why
there are certain as a woman, there are certain aspects of your femininity that just bleed into everything you do. You can't really help it.
And it's the same with men. There's just this masculinity that bleeds through, and you could, as a man or a woman, you could write the opposite sex really well, but there's just something about how you write where there's just a bit of masculinity or femininity that bleeds through your work.
It just does. It's not a good or a bad thing. It's just something that happens.
Yeah, it's just something that happens, and by no means does it deter the score or anything. It doesn't make. It's not the reason why it's a 9 or whatever. I just was curious, since you had read it, if you had given the gender or the house a gender.
No.
Okay.
It's no. I read it as a genderless entity. Like it's a semi-sentient house.
Yeah.
Or a sentient house. Well, it's like it can't move or anything.
It can't move, but it has thoughts and emotions. It just has a way of verbally expressing. Well, kind of, but not really. Like when she says, like, she groans, like the house creaks. But other than that, she can't do any, or it, whatever.
Like she talks about the house trying to express, or at least, to express love or hope or some kind of emotion. And that I took away, like, okay, so sometimes how, like, when you walk into a house and you just feel unwelcome.
Yeah.
And it's nothing to do with the people and everything to do with the house.
Yeah. That's
what that put me in mind of. Like, and I thought that was a really, I don't know if that's what she was going for. I'm sure she's had those experiences, but that was I think that was a great way to sort of evoke that memory in you as a human.
Yeah.
From the perspective of
a non-sentient entity. Since we kind of touched up on it with, like, you can't help it. You can't help but your femininity or my masculinity bleeding into what we write. What did you think of Hoffman's style?
I gave her an 8.8.
I gave the style a 10.
I really liked this book. It is profoundly sentimental, and that is, like, I would recommend it to anybody, but I probably won't read it again for a while because it's just something about sentimental writing, something about sentiment, like just that. It's like I have to go through that in phases and spurts. I can't do it all the time.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, but it's not bad. Like, it is good. There's just so much of it there that I had to dock at 1.2.
I gave it a perfect score of 10 simply because not only was it beautifully sentimental, but at no point did it feel like it lost its footing.
No. I agree with you. She did really, really well for a debut novel. Like, she's written other stuff, and no one will convince me otherwise. Because
I was about to say, Lonnie,
this
maybe
is
her
exceptional.
debut, but this is by far not the first thing she's ever written. She's had time to hone her craft.
Yeah.
She did the wise thing and wrote a few things beforehand, but didn't do what?
Well, she's, and whether or not those were novels or just short stories, or she got someone to help her pick up the rough spots.
Given how this is written with the parts, I could see this being like she wrote short stories. Her that's where she got her start, and then she probably asked herself, okay, what if I wrote these short stories that had this connective tissue that tied everything together, even though they're completely a different cast of characters, but they all take place in this one setting? I feel like that's what this essentially is. Was her debut novel was her venturing out from the short story world and going, okay, I don't want to jump off into the deep end and just write a complete full novel from beginning to end. So let's see if I can still do the short story medium, but connect all these short stories together in such a way that it reads like a complete piece.
Yeah, she definitely she's definitely comfortable with the short story format, and she definitely used that as one of her main tools in the toolbox, putting this piece together. And she did great. She did a really good job.
So how did you feel about the concept / execution of this piece?
Initially I gave it a 5 and 5, and I think I'm going to keep it at that, a 5 and 5.
I gave it a 5 and 5 as well. The idea of writing from the perspective of the house, while probably not the most 100% original, like there's probably other novels out there. It's so rare. It's probably, if there's other books that exist, it's so rare that I have yet to really come across one.
I've seen similar kinds of ones, but they were mostly children's stories. So to see it within an adult version is actually it's really nice, and it's with how her execution is perfect.
Yes.
So it's fantastic. It's great. I can't change that score. I don't want to change that score.
No.
Now, structure, because you have some thoughts on this that you have intimated you would like to share. Yes.
Okay. So to get the score out of the way, I did give this a perfect 10.
I did too.
Just for sure. In no way, even part 1 that felt slow, it still felt like it was going somewhere. But the reason why I feel like, and here's, even though this is a 10, I don't even know where I would put this in terms of a gripe. I don't know if it's structure or if it's another category altogether, but because this takes place, it even tells you on the back, over the course of 50 years. So 50 years, I feel like this, where do you think in terms of periods of time does this novel start? Because I think they said that I think 25 years or so was spent with the Morgans, and then the rest of it's whatever. But you spend 1979 with Olivia and Ethan, so it's at least 1979 or 1978 when they move in. They didn't spend that much time there.
No.
So I would say that this starts in either 1954 or 1953.
Ish.
Ish.
That was the vibe
Like,
that I got.
Mid to like mid early 50s.
Early to mid 50s.
Yeah. Here's my gripe with part 1. When it comes out that Rebecca is gay, I felt like the acceptance by the mother in that time period, which would be like the 60s or 70s at this point, would not have been the case. She would have been, at that point, it was too idyllic to suspend my disbelief. Because in those decades, if you were gay or lesbian, you were for the most part, you were shunned. Didn't matter if it was your father or your mother.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the structure, I feel like part 1 served. I would say that this entire book is a good analogy for how we view romantic relationships. Part 1 is your first love, the first time you've ever been in love, and even if it ends, no matter how it ends, you'll find things to look back on fondly, and
Say so.
and it sets the standard for every love after that.
That's true.
Be it up or down. Obviously, for the house, it went down. It went straight to an abusive person. And then part 3 is essentially you dealing with the trauma of it. Huh?
Killing a fly. I'm not ignoring you. I'm killing a fly.
Part 3 is like, okay, you've lived through the abuse, and you're trying to move on, but it's still too close to home.
Yes.
In this case, for the book, quite literally, because you're getting the grandfather. Then in part 4 could be a relationship where it's like, okay, it feels like things are going good. Things might get better, but then one day, without any notification, your significant other just, as a modern term, ghosts you. And you're left with no closure. Like, you don't know, like, did you do something wrong? Is it something you did? Was it them? Blah, 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 blah. And then part 5, you could kind of say, is you're being single for a little while, and maybe there's an occasional romp in the sack in way of Calvin and Sarah.
What did you say?
Romp in the sack?
Yes. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know, but
So-
I understand.
The way that this whole thing is just structured, and I don't know if this was intentional on the author's part, but to view it from that point is just, it kind of adds a layer to it. And also, with part 2, I, again, don't know if the author intended this, but there's an irony to how the characters were named. You have Ethan. And Ethan usually means safe, strong, firm. He is anything but.
Yeah.
He is not safe. He is a danger. Then you have Olivia, Olive, giving life. She was going to. Cut short.
He died.
So, again, if you intended that, brilliant. If you didn't, happy accident. But the structure of this novel was...
Life does do that sometimes, where you get those happy accidents. And I don't just mean in terms of fiction, I mean in terms of people we interact with in the real world.
Yeah.
So it is like it is
So-
a nice little echo.
Well, you gave it a 9 point what? Or an 8
Structure?
point? Yeah, what did you give for structure?
No, I gave it a solid 10.
What are we?
I don't know what your 9 point was. I gave structure a 10.
What did you dock something then? Oh. Was it style you docked?
I didn't. I mean, I gave it an 8.8.
Yeah, that's what I'm still stuck on. Because I gave both those a 10. I'm like, wait a minute, what? Okay, never mind. So style, 10 out of 10. All right. Any thoughts from you? I feel like I kind of gushed for a bit.
No, I think you covered. I think you covered pretty much everything that I would cover, especially as far as like starting with the Morgans in part 1. Like that's you talk about it in terms of a relationship, like looking at it in terms of relationships, but I mean, who was your first family?
Mom and dad.
Your mom and dad. Mom and dad set the tone for every relationship you have. They do.
Yeah.
Whether you do it, whether you know it purposely or not. They do. So, like, moving from mom and dad into Ethan and Olivia, like, it's that these were her first people, and she was very excited, and she was like the Morgans. She was very excited, and she was the house.
Yeah.
Loved this family. Wonderful family. If everybody could be like the Morgans, I'd be happy. So, well, you get new people. And the new people are sometimes worse. And what happens, or what I at least saw, was like as we progressed, like the house talks about like the weed. Like you get so the first person who smoked weed was Jack.
Yeah.
So when Ethan and Olivia and their friends were smoking weed, like the house, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah.
So you have this little piece of connection here. And then they're also using this white powder that I've never seen before, but it makes them do funny things. So when further down the line, you get Jessica and the children, the house goes, I know what that behavior is.
Yeah.
And so, and the bit with Alan, the thing with Alan was, I mean, that was quite sad, if not deserved. That was its own kind of like melancholy.
Yeah.
So you know how you go from an abusive relationship to melancholy?
Yeah.
To where you're trying to make someone feel better while also you're trying to feel better about what happened. Do you know? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's there is the abandonment, but I feel like the abandonment thing is something that the house has to deal with. Like there's people being taken from you, and then there's being abandoned. And I feel like that's the being abandoned bit first. I think that first started with Alan. I don't think it happened first with the Morgans. That was just like cutting the apron strings and,
Yeah.
or pushing the baby bird out of the nest or whatever. In terms of development.
Yeah.
I think the very first abandonment was started with Alan. Because, like, that was, and then it carried into, I forget the children's names.
Which part?
The kids.
In part.
Jessica's kids.
Oh, Matthew and Katie.
Matthew and Katie.
Yeah, I had a hard time remembering Jessica's name because I think there's Jennifer in part 3, and I was just like, that's too close to, in terms of like
There is a
spelling,
Jennifer.
length of name. Like
Yeah.
there's Jennifer and Jessica. I'm like, yep, not gonna remember Jessica's name all that well because I just got done with Jennifer.
Yeah. But I feel like in just going to what you said about relationships and being abandoned. I think the first abandonment started with Alan.
Yeah, but that's like a forced abandonment on Alan's part because he.
That's like somebody breaking up with you because they're going into the army.
Yeah. Like.
But then.
Yeah, it sucks, but it kind of makes sense in a way, like why he can't stay.
Right.
Like, well, the house sold. I mean, we found, and there's an opening at the home. The thing I hated about those kids was like, just fucking take your dad in. I mean, yeah, he's grumpy, but like, I mean, the house sees that he actually is, emotionally hurt when the kids don't either come by or when they leave without whatever. Like he.
Well, he cut himself so badly he needed to go to the ER, and he didn't call anybody because he figured nobody was going to come.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, that could be his shitty kids, but he could also have been a shitty dad.
I got that vibe from Pete. Because, and here's where I'll take like a little personal experience to kind of.
Well, go on.
Like, my mother and my uncle have voiced that, like, growing up, my grandfather wasn't a perfect father. But in his old age, he realized, as he got older, he realized, like, okay, what I was doing was not okay, and he worked to get better. This is where Alan fails, where maybe he did realize how shitty of a parent he was, but he didn't do anything to repair what damages were done to his children as kids.
I got the impression that Alan lost his wife pretty early, and the kids grew up semi-motherless.
Yeah.
She was there long enough for them to remember her, but she died early enough that he would have had an emotional breakdown, or he would have had a hard time taking care of kids and grieving for his wife. And
while working in.
That would have informed his decisions as a parent. And so, from that perspective, yes, I can understand Pete's frustration, but Pete also needs to get his head out of his ass, or maybe lose another person and figure out what the fuck it's like.
Yeah.
Conversely, you are right about Alan, though, like, doing very little to make those amends.
Yeah.
To the point that, like, you do kind of feel for him, losing his wife's ring, losing the pieces of her that he had left. But at the same time, it's like, you did have that coming to you.
Yeah. I guess moving on to diction. So I feel like we could talk about its structure and everything else for days.
Yeah, probably. Diction, I gave an 8.9.
I gave it an 8.
Because I like how she puts, there is a flow, there is a rhythm to her speech. She's not afraid of keeping a rhythm in her sentences, in her words, using her words in very nice ways. It's nothing dazzling.
But it makes sense in the context of the house. A house wouldn't know to.
A house uses vocabulary that it has access to.
Yeah, which if the people she's living with or that are living inside of her aren't using, complex words or anything like that, it's not going to use them as the house isn't going to use them as well.
Well, and it's like you don't even have to use complex words to be a good writer. You just have to use the words that exist in ways that are at least unique enough that it's not like reading the same fucking thing over and over and over and over again. That's a callback to as far as formatting.
9.7.
I gave her a 9. I did not like. This is what bothered me.
The beginning of each part. I didn't mind that.
That annoyed me. It. Her font did not bother me as much as it bothered you.
Here's why the font bothers me. This is the same font used in Turlson's books. And I associate fonts with certain genre. I would not use Baskerville as I wouldn't know where.
What ought she have used?
Here's where it's tricky because I would have to type out her words onto a document and play with fonts to be like, okay, this is what would work. It's the open sway of the J's and the Q's that really stuck out to me whenever they capital J's and Q's that would just stick out to me. And I would have used something that was a little more like, okay, so like this speaks of, okay, so Baskerville, I would even go as far as to say they don't really work for Turlson's books either. Baskerville I kind of associate with like kind of a period piece, like 1800s, like old text. Like if you're doing a pastiche of that time period, sure, go ahead. I would have used something that's a little more modern and neutral in its appearance, instead of being this grandiose swoop with the J's, because it is a house. It is, as we've mentioned, genderless. Because the quality of the writing itself will get that sentimentality across. You don't need this font that to me speaks sentimentality to help push that sentiment forward. I would have probably used Fairfield or Saban.
Okay.
Which is the font used in The Haunting of Hill House.
Okay.
I would have used that kind of font. Like, still, still a serif font, but not as... But Saban and Fairfield are a little more... It's less wide and a little more, I would say, neutral looking, as opposed to this romantic J and the wide Qs with the extravagant line to make it a Q instead of an O. I wish I could find a Q right now, but I'm not able to find one.
I'm looking for a Q.
But yeah, it just, the font didn't work with me, and the indentation. You could tell she just hit tab. The indentations are too wide.
Yes.
Other than that, there are no complaints about this book's formatting. Other than the font and the indentation. I would have used Fairfield or Saban instead of Baskerville.
Saban with the V or Saban with the B? With the B.
Saban.
S-E-B-A-N?
S-A-B-O-N. Saban.
S-A-B-O-N. I'm trying to leave helpful information in case she sees this.
Okay. But yes. If you're writing historical fiction, Baskerville works great. Even Hoefler or those two work great. Hoefler or Baskerville work great for historical fiction. It does not work for something that is, we'll just call this contemporary, even though it starts in the 50s.
I can't find a Q, but I'm just going to take your word for it.
I could probably find a Q in Manastique. It's the same goddamn font. Here we are. Page 81 of Manastique. QT.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
It is way too extravagant looking of a Q for this piece. It doesn't fit the 1950s to 1980s or 90s time period of this novel for me.
So a Saban or a Fairfield?
Saban or Fairfield.
Okay.
Or even Bodani Book.
What?
Bodani Book.
Bodani?
B-O-D-O-N-I Book. Bodani. Those three fonts would have probably been better. Length.
To clarify on formatting, it seems really nitpicky. It does. But it does go a long way to aesthetic.
Are you talking about your little bit that you didn't like?
No, I'm talking about what you've been talking about. I'm trying to explain to people why nitpicking formatting is so important and why it should have been done for this. It goes a very long way to making a book feel comfortable. If it's all haphazard and slapdash, and you're gonna pretend like it's an experiment, but really you just didn't know what you were doing, like, it's gonna show. As far as length goes, I gave it a 10.
10.
It was perfect. That was a great place to end it. Nobody overstayed their welcome, pun not intended. Everything fell in the way it needed to fall in, and there was the details, even the little details that were added, they weren't unnecessary or extraneous. Like, everything flowed together.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I would just be regurgitating everything you said. This ended right where it needed to. I would not extend or cut any person's role in this. Even though, like, there are, like, I wouldn't say that I wanted the Morgans back, like the house was saying, but in the same sentiment, it's like you kind of were hoping that she gets something similar to the Morgans eventually with each part that happened. It's like, well, that fucking sucked. Well, that fucking sucked.
Well, and then
Sucked.
to finally have
At the very end,
at the very end the new, I forget what the new family
the Thompsons.
Thompsons. To to get the Thompsons right.
I want to say Steven, and I remember the baby's name is Nicole.
Andrea.
Yeah, Steven and Andrea, and then Tyler. Oh, and also kind of just going, because I did watch an interview with the author on YouTube. Yeah, talking about how it was the house she grew up in when she left was the inspiration for the story. I feel like the novel ends with a fictional beginning of her family, and she's baby Nicole.
Yes.
Like, you don't actually get her story because that might have been too personal and painful for her to write about.
Well, there was no reason for her to tell that.
There was no reason for her to go into it. So, like, it was nice to have, like, this is the humble beginning of what my childhood was, kind of thing.
Of a place that she obviously loved a great deal.
And probably, like, when she left, when she moved out of the house, it's probably what led her to be like, well, what kind of life did my house live before even I was there? And therefore, she just created these narratives out of nothing. So, again, we kind of got on a sidetrack, but yeah, no, this I could probably say this book is by far the best of the indie books we've read so far.
I would agree. Definitely the highest scoring, I think.
Yeah.
Or one of the highest scoring, anyway.
One of the highest scoring. Quotability.
Really, I only had the 2.
So yeah. Okay, we'll get into that later. You made it seem like, oh, perfect book or whatever.
No, I really only had the 2.
One that I argue with you on.
What?
One that I argue with isn't. I mean, I get that, like, quotes, what you find quotable and what I find obviously subjective, but I would say
no.
Certain aspects of quotability are objective. Like, it has to be clever, funny, some kind of hidden truth or something that's exposed. Because to me that's what a quotable moment is. It's not it's a great description.
No, one of them came from page 190, like from the last page.
Okay. What was yours from the last page?
I wish time would slow down, for I still sometimes fear that my happiness will be taken from me yet again. I want this joy to remain, this sense of purpose and feeling of peace.
So we both had that one.
Huh?
We both had the same one from that page.
We both picked that one?
Yeah. Which just goes to show that because even not from the point of view of a house, from the point of view of people, when you're in a good time, when you're experiencing a good moment and you've experienced shit, you're like, I hope this lasts. And even if it's not forever, I hope it feels like it.
Yeah.
What was your other one?
I have to find it.
Go
through yours. I have to find mine.
Well, we both had that one. My other one, because I only found 2, is the bottom of 149, and it goes into 150. As time passed, the memories that I'd held on to didn't feel like memories anymore. They felt like dreams, images from a life that had happened long ago. Eventually, they weren't my memories at all, just a movie reel of glimpses from someone else's life. They were detached and distant from me, growing more alien every day. Not fading or disappearing, but feeling every minute less real. It was as if I had made them up, figments of my imagination floating about with no link to reality.
So you picked that because it's just felt
It
familiar?
it's familiar because, you know, you look back on your memories as a child, and as you get older, it's like they do start to feel more dreamlike than actual memories. The further you get away from them, and I've even started asking, like when I'm repeating memories to like even my parents, I'll preface the memory with this. Now, correct me if I'm remembering this wrong. As to where if you had asked me that question of the same memory when I was 16, I would not question the objectivity of the memory or even the details of the memory. I would be like, no, for certainty, this is what happened. But like now, as I'm getting older, I'm like, okay, you're gonna have to correct me if I'm remembering this wrong. But this is what I remember, and then, oh, bouncing back to structure while you're finding your last quote. I loved how the book started and ended with the title.
Yes. Yes. That was very nice. That was a very good touch.
Did you find your other quote?
I don't remember where it was, but it's when they paint over when Olivia did all the paintings on the walls in her studio, and then they come in and they paint over.
That's still in part 6, I believe.
I thought it was.
No, that's in part. I want to say that no, that's part 4 with Jessica Matthew. I think they painted over that then.
Wasn't it her?
I think so.
I remember reading it.
I remember reading it too. I can't remember if it was the. Anyway, I know what you're talking about. It's the erasure of Olivia completely.
That erase that. And just how.
It's like. It would be
how
like.
sad it was.
It would be like. Even in real life, you know, you've got this memento or something of a past relative or
someone you loved dearly, and you end up having to, like, it ends up just being yanked away from you.
Yeah, like let's say you've got like a handwritten letter from someone, and you're going through stacks of old papers and like shredding old documents you don't need anymore, and let's just say it accidentally somehow ends up shredded. It'd be like that, and if the person's dead, and it was the last thing you had of their handwriting, you no longer have it. No, I can see why that would stick out to you.
Yeah, it was very. It was awful. It was sad. It made me sad. Like I wasn't particularly attached to Olivia, but the house was attached to Olivia, and as a reader, I am attached to the house, so
yeah,
that hurt. So I hurt, and I know what that's like too. But those were my 2. So
okay,
I gave her a 4.
Yeah, a 4. How did you feel? In terms of your satisfaction through reading it?
10.
10.
10.
10.
Across the board. Well, not across the board.
Not across the board, just for that bullet point.
But I am extreme. I will recommend this book to, you know something? I'm debating recommending it to my mom because I don't know if she'd be able to get into it. But I would recommend it to a friend of mine. I will buy it for a friend of mine.
I don't know if I'd recommend it for my mother because I don't need her crying.
I just don't. I don't think my mom is a lot like me. And God, if 15-year-old me had heard me ever say that, I would have killed myself. But
My mom and I are on the same wavelength. We're like sentimental things. It's nice. It's nice for a while, but if I have to stay here, I'm going to be really annoyed. You need to get your shit together. We need to move on. And maybe that's just a product of our upbringing, but I will get this book for a friend of mine. I don't know if my mom would really care for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know someone else who would. So for that, I gave it 10 extra credit.
I gave it 8 extra credit points, simply for the familiarity of reading it. Like I said, with the characters, you've known these people, you've experienced these things, if not to its exact nature, something very similar. And then of course, those 2 quotes that I found, they just like really hit a chord. And it really makes you, it really, not you, it made me, like, you brought up earlier where you enter a house and you just don't feel welcome. But like even going to, like, in my case, like I can visit my childhood home. And it kind of feels like visiting an old friend, where it's like, because there are memories you've made with that house. And it's not the same, like a friendship that kind of teetered off, or you had to like kind of say goodbye. Like, you see each other, and it's not quite the same as maybe when you were kids, but you acknowledge each other.
I will take your word. I know what you're talking about with seeing a friend that you're no longer close to. I know what that's like, but I cannot visit my childhood homes.
But for the sake that it, like, really, I'm giving it an A. Go ahead.
One of them, I wouldn't, like, it was, I know for a fact it was extensively remodeled after we left. So it's like, it wouldn't even be like seeing an old friend anymore. It would be like it would be a stranger occupying my old friend's body.
Well, in that case, you could say it's like your house went through a
It's body snatchers.
what are they called? No, is it sexual reassignment surgery or something
No,
like
because
that?
it's not even a sexual reassignment. It's like, it's a completely different soul.
Okay. But yeah, no. So for overall score, without the extra credit, it's an 89.7, but with it, it is 96.7 baby apricots out of 100.
Aww. You got the baby apricots in there.
Got the baby apricots in there. We kind of glossed over the cat.
Okay, there we go. I gave it, sorry, I completely ruined the momentum that we had going. I apologize. I'm really, really bad at math. Even on a calculator. I gave it an 89.7.
Okay.
Do you just want me to round up to 90?
No, is that with or without extra credit?
Oh, that's without extra credit. 89.7.
Okay.
With extra credit, it's 99.7.
Okay. So by 0.7 points, it is now the highest rated book on your end.
Yes.
I don't know what my next highest rated book is. So, but this is the highest rated one because it, with the extra credit, is a 96.7.
You don't know what your next highest one is?
No, I don't have all those notes. I would probably say it's. Actually, no, it's not my highest one. My highest one is still The Haunting of Hill House. But in terms of indie books, my highest one would probably be Surf City Acid Drop. Can't find Eventide anywhere. I know it's in here.
Do you not write down your scores?
I do. I just don't have them all in order because I use this journal for outlining as well.
Why don't you just get another journal?
I'm cheap.
That's not cheap, that's disorganized.
Nope, it's not disorganized. It's cheap because there is everything is. Oh, there's the Scanner Darkly.
So, while JD tries to figure out which part of his journal his scores are kept in.
Nope, it's still SCAD.
Still SCAD? That's actually a pretty great compliment for how much we like Craig.
Yes. Why?
Congratulations, Ms. Hoffman. You are as good as Craig Charleston.
All right.
Probably better, given that this is a debut.
Do we have anything in line for the next time?
I was going to ask you. I know we've got, okay, so until we find another indie, I know we were talking about DeLillo and
John.
P-Face McGee.
Do we?
Huh?
Who?
The one with the guy who's peed on by the hooker. You said it was crazier than Rattlestar. What's I can't.
I said
Gravity's Rainbow.
Yeah, Gravity's Rainbow.
Gravity, whatever it's called.
Gravity's Rainbow.
Gravity's Rainbow.
What were the DeLillos we had?
I have Underworld and we have Ratner's Star. We were talking about going back to Ratner's Star. That is going to be a long project.
So is Gravity's Rainbow, but so is Underworld. Too bad you don't have any of
those.
I could do those by myself.
No,
I'm currently
with Gravity's Rainbow and Underworld, and even Ratner's Star, given just the state of the thing. Would that be one of those ones where you'd want to get back into the not the read-alongs, but whatever we were calling them at the time?
The first impressions.
I don't think first impressions would work with something like Underworld and Gravity's Rainbow. They're so fucking long.
Especially the twists and turns that Gravity's Rainbow goes down. A first impression is not going to be accurate. And then again, it's not going to be a first impression. It's not going to be a first impression for me because I've read it twice.
What would you want to? What would you want to? Because I do think we should do those. I would like to do those. I would like to explore those. I would like to do that exploration with you.
Let's hold off on both Ratner's and because right now I'm currently reading through DeLillo's entire oeuvre from first novel to his most recent one.
Okay.
Let's save Ratner Star when I get to Ratner Star, and let's save Underworld for when I get to Underworld. Just so I'm not reading out of order, because I'm reading simply just a few reasons. One, two, I'm going to stop recording.
Wait, we have to do our goodbyes.
Oh, yeah. Type out a like, hit comment, and upvote a subscribe, and molest the bell.
Bless the bell.
Yeah, we talked about abuse. It's fine. You kind of have to finger it to get notified, so molest the bell.
Well, just run your mouse over it.
Just get your tongue up in there.
Yes, like,
we'll
subscribe.
We'll be back with a new read. If by the time we decide what we're reading before this is posted, EK will put it as a graphic at the very end to let you know what we're reading next.
And barring that, it'll just be a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, it will be for not just both of us, for everyone.